Tonight, Alberta's perfect storm, the hot and dry conditions fueling wildfires.
Everything's on fire around us.
The unpredictable threat and the new dangers.
We are not out of the woods.
As the military fighting the flames gets a visit from the Prime Minister. An Ontario battery plant and a battle over funding.
I am absolutely confident that we're going to get a deal.
Construction stalled and claims Ottawa hasn't done enough. Plus, Martha Stewart, cover model.
I'm going to be the oldest person, I think, ever on a cover of Sports Illustrated.
The lifestyle guru strikes a historic pose.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Sandy Ronaldo.
Good evening. Shifting winds are intensifying the danger in Alberta tonight after days of explosive wildfires fueled by hot and dry conditions. The Prime Minister visited Edmonton today to meet with military personnel helping fight the fires. While approaching flames forced the evacuation of yet another town, the northern community of Valley View. And that is where CTV's Alberta Bureau Chief Bill Fortier begins tonight's coverage.
Under a hazy sky, people made their way out of the town of Valley View this afternoon as water bombers moved in. Residents grabbing groceries and trying to get gas.
We've had some pretty big forest fires in Alaska in the summer times, but this is probably one of the worst ones I've ever seen.
This is crazy. It's crazy as it gets, you know. Everything's on fire around us, so everybody's got to get out of here.
Valley View is the latest Alberta town forced to evacuate after a wildfire started moving too close, overwhelming a man-made barrier.
Fire guards are great until the wind comes up, and then it's not always going to work. So they have jumped a few guards.
The line of fires threatening that town also inching closer to Fox Creek once again. It's been empty since Friday.
So Fox Creek.
Today, the Prime Minister visited Edmonton along with the Public Safety Minister for a briefing on the worsening situation from the military. 300 soldiers are helping with the firefight.
The Canadian Armed Forces, as they always do, have stepped up in order to provide that support.
There are more than a dozen evacuation orders across the province, forcing nearly 20,000 people from their homes. The wildfire situation has intensified in recent days with heat and no rain.
Hot and dry conditions throughout much of the province are creating the perfect storm for fires to start and grow quickly.
And officials fear the weather could actually get worse, with winds shifting and getting stronger.
Combined with the heat and dryness, this will cause dangerous conditions for our firefighters on the ground.
There are now more than 2,500 firefighters and support staff working on these fires from across Canada and the U.S., and more are needed still. Canada has reached out to Mexico, Australia, and New Zealand for more help. Bill Fortier, CTV News, Valley View, Alberta.
The wildfire danger stretches beyond Alberta's borders, forcing states of emergencies and evacuations in neighboring jurisdictions as well. More than 3,500 people have left the town of Hay River, Northwest Territories, and a nearby First Nation. At least 15 buildings on the reserve have already been burned. In Saskatchewan, a state of emergency is in effect for the community of Buffalo Narrows, where several nearby wildfires are burning out of control. And BC expanded its evacuation orders this afternoon because of heavy winds, with the 20,000 people in the city of Fort St. John now under an evacuation alert. Well, the scorching hot, dry weather also broke more than 30 heat records yesterday. Cities across the province sweltered in temperatures 10 to 15 degrees above seasonal levels. The highest was in Squamish, where the mercury peaked at 35.8 degrees. The hot weather is expected to continue. Tensions are rising between a global auto giant and the federal government, with thousands of jobs hanging in the balance. Stellantis pulled the plug today on work at its battery plant for electric vehicles in Windsor, Ontario. The car maker is demanding a better deal from Ottawa after seeing what the competition got. CTV's Ottawa Bureau Chief Joyce Napier reports.
The crews are still there, but construction at the EV battery plant in Windsor has clearly stopped. A twist in a mega deal that was greeted with fanfare only a year ago. As of today, reads a statement, the Canadian government has not delivered on what was agreed to. Therefore, Stellantis and LG Energy Solution will begin implementing their contingency plans. And those plans could mean moving the plant across the border to the U.S., where Washington's new climate legislation, the IRA, offers hundreds of billions of dollars in incentives and subsidies.
We need the federal government to come to the table and show their support like they have all along.
But what Stellantis now wants is a deal comparable to the one Ottawa struck with auto giant Volkswagen last month, up to $13 billion in federal subsidies to build a cell manufacturing plant in St. Thomas, Ontario.
The bottom line that we're going to see this deal renegotiated. It's going to have similar terms to what we see in the IRA, which is similar terms to what we see in Volkswagen.
Late this afternoon, Ottawa said it was confident a deal with Stellantis could be reached, but offered this caution.
The resources of the federal government are not infinite, and we are counting on Ontario to do its fair share, and we're counting on Stellantis to be reasonable.
But it was all reasonable 14 months ago when Stellantis and South Korean battery maker LG Energy Solutions announced the construction of the $5 billion plant in Windsor and the creation of 2,500 jobs. The federal and Ontario share, $500 million each. But that was then.
We're not in a position where we can allow this to slip through our fingers right now.
But how much of a subsidy is Ottawa willing to offer Stellantis and LG? This as the Prime Minister flies to South Korea on a trade visit. LG is one of the country's largest companies. Sandy?
Joyce, thank you. And the Prime Minister will be in Japan later this week for the G7 summit, where the war in Ukraine will be on the agenda. In London today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky received assurances of more attack drones and missiles from British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Zelensky's meeting was the fifth in 3 days in Europe as he seeks aid for a counter-offensive.
We really need some more time, not too much. We'll be ready, in some time.
Ukraine's military said today it's made major gains on the battlefield, pushing back Russian forces around Bakhmut. A special prosecutor looking at the Donald Trump Russia investigation found the FBI relied too much on unconfirmed intelligence. But the new report stopped short of finding the blockbuster revelations that Trump and his allies said would be discovered. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon joins us now with more on the findings. Joy?
Sandy, remember all that talk about Russia collusion in the Trump presidential campaign in 2016? Well, the long-awaited Durham report is out. Appointed by the Trump administration, John Durham slammed the FBI's handling of the investigation because the Bureau relied too heavily on raw and uncorroborated information, saying senior FBI personnel displayed a serious lack of analytical rigor toward the information they received, especially information from politically affiliated persons or entities. Durham's report directly contradicts the 2019 Inspector General's report that said the FBI was justified after a Trump aide bragged to an Australian diplomat that the Russians had damaging information on Hillary Clinton. That led to the appointment of Robert Mueller. He couldn't establish a criminal conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin, but he did expose how Russia tried to meddle in America's election. But after 4 years, Durham's $6.5 million report falls short of Trump's allegations of a deep state conspiracy against him. Tonight, in a statement, the FBI says it had already put in place dozens of corrective actions. Sandy?
All right, Joy, thank you. Now, once touted as the future of digital journalism, Vice Media Group has applied for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection after struggling to produce profits. The edgy, youth-oriented digital publisher has agreed to sell its assets to a group of lenders for almost $250 million in exchange for credit, but will continue to produce content. Vice was launched in Montreal in the mid-90s before moving to New York to become a global media company. Well, last year's struggling housing market in Canada appears to be in recovery now that the Bank of Canada has paused interest rate hikes. There is a bump in buyers, a bounce in home prices, even bidding wars, as CTV's BC Bureau Chief Melanie Nagy reports.
After months of sluggish sales and slumping prices, Canada's housing market is bouncing back.
You won't have trouble selling your home in the next few months.
Sean Cathcart, a Canadian Real Estate Association economist, says there's been a surge in national home sales.
The demand that's out there for housing in Canada, we know, is going to be as far as the eye can see.
From March to April this year, the number of homes sold jumped by more than 11%.
Smaller properties in this area, Burnaby, more.
Manny Ball is a realtor in Metro Vancouver. After the Bank of Canada paused interest rate hikes earlier this year, he saw an increase in prospective home buyers.
The bidding wars are back. You know, we're seeing anywhere from a couple offers per property, upwards of 20 plus offers.
That means housing costs are also climbing. The average Canadian home price is now roughly $716,000. That's up more than $100,000 since January.
We're seeing those price escalations. They probably started in early February, and they're just escalating every month.
Analysts say prices are being pushed up by bustling markets in Vancouver and Toronto. They also say the continual lack of supply is having an impact.
The demand is there, but our core concern is the lack of supply. There's just not enough supply.
Realtors say some clients are reluctant to sell because they're worried they won't find a new place. Others are said to be waiting for even higher prices.
The spring market, comes with a lot more buyers coming out, but we're just not seeing the sellers there at the moment, so that's driving a lot of competition.
But there's some good news when it comes to supply. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says builders are stepping up activity, prompting new construction to grow by 22%. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Vancouver.
A medical rethink is being proposed tonight about hormone therapy for women with severe menopause. The new Canadian research suggests the risks may have been overstated, potentially upending decades of advice for women struggling with difficult symptoms. CTV's Heather Butts reports.
The average age of menopause in Canada is 51, but for many, symptoms hit much younger.
Like many women, I was blindsided by menopause. At the height of my professional career in my 40s, I started to experience symptoms.
Janet Coe had night sweats, heart palpitations, brain fog, and sleeplessness. Now president of the Menopause Foundation of Canada, Coe opted for hormone therapy to help treat the debilitating effects.
And it was a game changer. Within a week, I started to feel like myself again. It's not a magic pill. It's not for everyone.
Hormone therapy has been controversial since the 90s when a major study found an association with higher rates of breast cancer and stroke. A new review published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal suggests that previous studies overstated the risks that were mainly associated with women over 60 when they go up anyway due to age.
From that was a huge trickle-down effect where newer physicians weren't trained in menopause management, a lot of fear among prescribing.
The new report found the risks are much lower for women in their 40s and 50s. The additional risk of breast cancer for women 50 to 59 is estimated at 3 additional cases for every 1,000 women who use the therapy for 5 years.
Our goal is really just to make other doctors out there know that the attitudes we have and philosophies around menopause management are not the same as they were 20 years ago.
Articles like this actually blow open the conversation.
Conversations experts say are vital to have even before symptoms set in.
People should qualify for their treatment based on their symptoms, which for some people may start as early as their early 40s. And if we wait until people are a certain age, it means we've actually missed an opportunity to support them.
Doctors stress every treatment plan should be personalized. The paper is intended to help doctors and patients weigh the risks and benefits of hormone therapy. Sandy.
Heather, thank you. Coming up, Martha Stewart makes history.
I was motivated by showing people that a woman my age can still look good.
Gratified to be the oldest woman to grace this cover. Plus, Picasso's canine cover-up. Lifestyle guru Martha Stewart has once again reinvented herself. The 81-year-old can now add cover girl to her CV. She's become the oldest model ever to grace the front page of Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, as CTV's Genevieve Boschman reports.
Hi, I'm Martha Stewart.
Domestic maven Martha Stewart traded her apron for swimsuits.
Getting dressed in 10 different bathing suit outfits can be a little exhausting.
And that she landed the coveted cover of Sports Illustrated at 81 sends women a message, she says, about embracing change and the passage of time.
And my motto is, when you're through changing, you're through. Chewy, chunky, crumbly.
The steamy looks a far cry from the cookie baking persona Stewart once perfected. She had worked as a model starting at age 15, landing high-profile gigs.
Underneath.
But in the 90s and early 2000s, she seemed to embody a traditional ideal of femininity.
I think there was definitely a subset of pop culture that looked at Martha as this like old-fashioned lady who, cared so much about place settings and the proper way of doing things.
Then she landed in jail, the mega business leader convicted of financial crimes.
And I'll be back. I will be back.
And Stewart did return, showing off an edge, a new public persona.
I'm gonna dress up as the Easter Bunny.
Oh, that's great.
The OG influencer, with rapper Snoop Dogg as her bestie.
Model.
This, as Sports Illustrated, too, is trying to show off it's turning a page. Having an 81-year-old gracing the cover once seemed unthinkable. Since the first edition in 1964, this cover has bookmarked supermodel careers and helped shape standards of beauty. On this cover, Stewart appears decades younger than her age. And observers say this is by no means evidence ageism is a thing of the past.
She can still maintain her feminine beauty, her sexuality, her, independence, all of these things, but we don't necessarily extend the same generosity, I would say, to other people of other genders and of other races.
Still, Stewart called this kind of historic and says she wants women to focus on living successfully at any age. Genevieve Boschman, CTV News, Montreal.
A couple in Ontario also proved age has no limit when it comes to love.
Where do you want us to cut it?
Bill and Helen O'Reilly celebrated their diamond anniversary at a retirement home east of Toronto. The pair was married 75 years ago today. Bill, who is 97, and Helen, who is 95, have 6 children, 17 grandchildren, and 13 great-grandchildren. And happy anniversary, Bill and Helen. Still ahead, shark attack. Oh! That was too close for comfort. The Stanley Cup won't be coming home to Canada this season, with both the Oilers and Leafs eliminated from the NHL playoffs this weekend, but there's always next year. Instead, we can obsess on the Ottawa Senators with today's deadline for bids to buy the team. CTV's Leah LaRocque reports.
We're trying to make it better. We just need y'all to hit the lever and give us control.
Will Snoop Dogg be the next owner of the Ottawa Senators? He sure hopes so.
And Ottawa can celebrate.
The bids are in. For those vying to be the next owner of the Senators, Snoop Dogg has teamed up with LA-based Nico Sparks. Sparks has reached out to Indigenous groups in the capital for a share of the team. Snoop Dogg wants to grow the sport and attract new audiences.
The boy Big Snoop Dogg giving a shout out to the First Nations of Canada. That's right, for joining Nico Sparks in the Ottawa Senators bid. We're trying to do something. We're trying to make a difference.
The offer is expected to come in at more than $1 billion.
This is the biggest day. This is the #1 biggest, most important day in Sens history since 2007, I would say, in the Stanley Cup Finals.
It's great. I think they need it. Any of the celebrities, I think Ryan Reynolds would have been great. It was too bad he pulled out.
And while Sens fans wait to see who will own the team, there are also questions about where they will play. Will that rink at Le Breton downtown be built, or will they stay out here in Canada? But the cost of a new rink could be hundreds of millions of dollars more.
To have that downtown, it could be like a big moment for the franchise in terms of like revitalizing it.
Bruce Firestone was one of the founders and first owners of the Ottawa Senators.
One of the things I know about Commissioner Gary Bettman and his right-hand person, Bill Daley, is they're both trained lawyers. They do not like to put a foot wrong.
He says a good relationship with the NHL will be key, and it's a decision that won't be made lightly.
Leah LaRocque, CTV News.
Also in Ottawa, an unexpected sight in the water. A deer swimming down the Rideau Canal during the morning commute. Police were called to check on the animal after it was seen wandering around downtown streets. After a lengthy swim, the deer got out on its own and headed into a park. And a fisherman in Hawaii looking for his catch of the day almost ended up as a meal himself after a massive tiger shark decided to take a bite out of his kayak.
Oh! Tiger shark! Tiger shark ran me.
Scott Haraguchi somehow managed to stay afloat, kicked the big fish in the face. Luckily, he's okay, and his kayak only suffered some minor damage. After the break, the pooch who peeked through, a masterpiece. One of Pablo Picasso's early paintings is being re-examined after X-ray technology revealed an unexpected image hidden in the masterpiece. CTV's Danielle Hamamdin shows us what's behind a thin layer of paint.
For decades, the Guggenheim Museum in New York has had on display this painting by the greatest painter of the 20th century. Le Moulin de la Galette by Pablo Picasso depicts a popular Parisian dance hall in the early 1900s. The swishing of the skirts, the top hats, the red lipstick, and at the bottom, a nondescript brown mass.
As a conservator, looking at this area where you can see other colors peeking through and you can see texture that doesn't relate to the final composition, I had a very strong feeling that there was something under there.
Using a process called X-ray fluorescence imaging spectroscopy, researchers were able to reveal that underneath that brown mass was actually a small dog Picasso had tried to conceal, possibly a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, a popular breed in Paris at the time.
My goodness, that was surprising for me at least. It completely changes how one would have encountered this picture. You would have seen this really quite adorable dog in the foreground looking almost directly at the visitor with this wonderful red bow.
Picasso was only 19 when he painted it, and the work is considered one of his early masterpieces. For years, researchers had been looking at it both under a microscope and using X-ray technology.
But what's interesting is that he in obscuring it, it was just a few hasty brush strokes, and so he did kind of leave a ghostly presence of the dog there.
One can only speculate as to why the dog had to go. Perhaps not to steal the show, only to come back to life more than a century later. Danielle Hamamdin, CTV News, London.
That's our newscast for this Monday. Thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo for Omar and all of us here at CTV National News. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow, we hope.